Welcome back, everyone. Now that I have destroyed my sleep schedule, grinded the raid an unholy amount these past few days, and finally fixed my sleep schedule, I'm here to talk about the first weapon that I'm interested in from the raid, which is the Deliverance. That is the first ever legendary kinetic fusion rifle. That's pretty exciting, I think, because we've obviously never had a fusion rifle in the kinetic slot, which gives new options that we've never seen before. And if you're a fusion rifle fan, I think this is pretty exciting because you're no longer bound to kinetic primary weapons. This is actually a big reason that I haven't used fusions in the past, because a lot of my favorite primary weapons are energy weapons, which means I'm probably not going to use a fusion rifle. I don't really like Bastion, and I'd prefer the legendary options. Now we have that option that creates so many new options and combinations that weren't possible before, and I think that's exciting. I think for many people that is enough reason to be using this fusion rifle. It's kind of in a class of its own because it doesn't have anything to compare to. It's unique as is, but it doesn't necessarily do anything that much better than the traditional best options, and I'd argue maybe it isn't as good maybe as things like the main ingredient, that infamous one that Zersold that's crazy good, or even like new options like the Snorri. I don't think that this is necessarily better than those options I mentioned, but again, the fact that it's the only option for the kinetic slot, it'll still get played because of that. As far as stats on the weapon, on the best roll, I would feel I was able to get, I had 75 range, 66 stability, 39 handling, 41 reload speed. And this weapon, of course, is an adaptive frame. It's a 740 charge time, so the same as main ingredient and Snorri. And it does have an inherent 16 zoom or 1.6 times zoom, 67 aim assist, and 80 recoil direction. Now, if I had to choose the best roll that you can get on this, though, I'd say that is going to be arrowhead, particle repeater or accelerated coils, perpetual motion, and harmony, or tap the trigger, or successful warm-up. It's got a few good perks in that last column. We'll talk about that in a moment. With those perks, though, you're going to get 68 range, 75 stability, 50 handling, 43 reload speed, and 100 recoil direction. Now, that is also counting the small boost to stats that you're going to get from the Adept Masterwork or the Crafted Masterwork. That gives you the small little bonus stats to every other category other than your Masterwork, and I did give that a Stability Masterwork. Now, this weapon is going to get an Adept version, and that means access to the Adept suite of mods. So if we did want to put an Adept stability on that, with that roll that I mentioned, it's going to get 84 stability, which is quite good. You factor on something like Perpetual Motion, and that's going to give between 5 and 10 stability. So let's say best case scenario, 94 stability. And if you want to go full into stability, you can go add on tap the trigger instead of something like Harmony, and that will give you between 90 and 100 stability, which is what the other two options that I mentioned for fusions, the Snorri and main ingredient, are capable of as well. Some of the small benefits that this weapon gets that might give it a little bit more reason to be used if you're looking for simply the best fusion to be using, ignoring that this is the only legendary one, is the fact that this does get enhanced perks. So those enhanced perks are going to have a little bit longer duration for their effects, mainly if they're kill perks or things that activate, or in some cases they just give you a small little additional bonus to stats. So maybe if you're taking a less ideal perk, you might be doing that just to get the additional stat bonus that it gives you. So that's a nice little reason for using it. If you can get to the point that you can craft this weapon, which is pretty hard as far as I can tell, but that's for a different video in the future. The other thing that this weapon gets is 100 recoil direction. In the case of main ingredient, I don't believe it is possible to get that 100 recoil direction with that weapon. The Snorri can, but 100 recoil direction, that kind of consistency on a fusion is important and could be a good reason to be using this. Like I mentioned, later on, we're going to get access to the Adept mods, which is another reason to be using this. Just, you know, turn up your stats even further. That's kind of nice and be more well-rounded. And this does have slightly higher aim assist. So 67 aim assist versus the 62 or 59 of the other options I mentioned. You know, a little bit of a bonus. Why not? The standout perks, in my opinion, in its first column is going to be Demolitionist and Perpetual Motion. I don't think I really saw these options on the other fusions, and it's not necessarily that these perks are better than what the other fusions had to offer. They had things like accuracy boost through Firmly Planted or Under Pressure, which, in my opinion, are debatably better than these standout perks. But nonetheless, Demolitionist and Perpetual Motion, still good perks. In the second column, there's actually quite a few unique perks. We had Tap the Trigger, which are on the other fusions, but if you're looking for maximum consistency, that's pretty cool. If you're looking to just mirror what you had in the energy slot, except for the kinetic slot, you could go for Perpetual Motion, Tap the Trigger again, and it'll function very similarly, I think, to the other fusions, minus that one point of zoom, which is a little disappointing, but nonetheless, closest that you're going to get with the only option available. You can go for something more unique like Harmony. Harmony, I did not find this on the other fusion rifles that are pretty popular, so that is one that I'm actually really interested in. You can play your primary more, and it encourages you to play your primary a bit more, and then you get really lethal with your fusion afterwards. That's why I enjoyed using that on my role as well. Successful warm-up, it's kind of like your Chaperone Roadborne, except on fusions. This is available on the Snorri as well, but again, on a kinetic fusion, you can mirror that here with the Deliverance. Chill Clip is an interesting one. I don't think this is going to be really used often in PvP because you need to have it on the top half of the mag, meaning when you spawn in, this isn't going to work. But if you get it active, I mean, it slows nearby targets on detonation. So that's kind of funny. I mean, maybe for 6s, that could be pretty unique or fun to use. I don't see that being a top option, especially for 3s, where the ammo economy is going to reset. And you're not going to get that in trials very often, but hey, that's cool. It does give also a small stability boost with the enhanced version, so maybe you just use it for the stability boost, I don't know, and just potential that it could be active. And finally, Adrenaline Junkie. This is really cool because if you get a nade kill, you get to pop off, but again, I don't see this as being a top option. Some of these perks sound really, really cool for 6s. Harmony, I think, is the one out of all of them that could potentially be used in 3s, but beyond that, PvP on these kind of weapons have kind of been solved. You go for consistency perks, accuracy, aim assist, stability, and that is all Tap the Trigger. So that's probably still going to be the best option, even though it's not the most unique. For PvE, you know, I thought I'd talk about this because I think this was a really cool combo. Demolitionist and Bait and Switch seemed kind of cool to me. Bait and Switch lets you deal damage with all your weapons and then get, I believe, a 10-second buff to damage to your Deliverance, the fusion rifle. And Demolitionist, obviously, is you throw a grenade and then it reloads. So you get to keep dumping out damage with this fusion. I like this because that kind of has synergy with some of the auto-loading rockets right now, kind of just rotating through your whole inventory, getting a buff, and then switching back to a rocket, and then switching back to the fusion, throwing a nade, reloading the fusion. Sounds pretty cool for dealing damage to me. So overall, main benefits of this fusion rifle is that it is the only kinetic legendary that, like I mentioned, creates new pairings and options and combinations that were just never possible, and that's exciting. That's going to get use on its own. I mentioned that a lot. It does have some new perks like Harmony, Chill Clip. It does get the successful warm-up as well, so that's kind of cool. But overall, is it the best individual fusion compared to the other two or other top options? I would say I didn't even mention Timeline's Vertex. I don't think so. It's got decent stats, but nothing too much better, I think, than what was possible on the other fusions. It can mirror the ability of the other fusions well, but it doesn't quite do it maybe as well because it lacks some sort of accuracy boosts outside of heating up, which requires a kill. And it's got lower zoom than the other fusions, which is going to limit your ability to completely map someone, which a lot of people really like to do with fusions. So, I don't know. Probably not the best individual fusion, but again, doesn't really matter. It's the only choice for the kinetic slot, so people are going to use it. Anyways, those are my thoughts on the Deliverance. Thanks for watching, everyone, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Take care.